The last time that we saw Chris's car, well, we had just got it off the trailer and we got it to run. So he's driven it around for a couple months, and we've had a couple issues with it. So the first is the idle has gotten pretty rough. I'll probably put that in a different video to fix for that. But the other issue is this rear end. So you see how far down this back end is? It's sagging and all crazy. And also you can see how these tires stick out like that. So there's a couple issues that we're going to try to fix today. See how bad that is? Just not good. So the first is going to be this rear suspension. So it needs shocks, but it also needs these links for the I can't think right now. It also needs the links for the leaf spring. I believe this car was supposed to come with a fiberglass leaf spring, but it doesn't. But that's okay. The real problem is somebody put a lowering bolt. So this bolt's about twice as long as it needs to be, which then moves that mount for the leaf spring really close to the tire. And if you had adjusted the strut rod so the tire was straight up and down, it would rub. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to do these adjustable strut rods because the bushings in them are just totally destroyed. So hopefully by the end of the day we will be able to get the back of this car up where it needs to be, and then also these tires aligned like they need to be, so that the back of this car will drive just a little bit better. With the wheels off, we can kind of inspect, do a little bit of checking here in the back. A couple of good things I see. So somebody has put stainless braided brake lines on this. The brake caliper and pads look good. There's no leaking, nothing like that. Somebody has put a new parking brake cable on it because this is not factory. Let's see. The bad things I see is these shocks are toast. They'll need replaced. But you can see once we get underneath here some of the other little issues that we got. So one is, see that bushing in there? I mean, it's totally gone. And because of that, you can't really adjust out these adjustable strut rods very well. Because even if you did, the bushing's so bad, it's going to look crappy. The other thing is this is way too long. Let me get the other one and show you. So this is the bolt, the normal spring height. You can see it's about 4 inches shorter. So the car, yes, will sit higher up in the back once this is done, but it won't rub on the tire anymore, and then we'll be able to adjust it with the new strut rods that we have. So here's all the parts we're going to put on today. We have these brand new adjustable strut rods which look really good compared to the old ones. We have brand new shocks, and then we have this whole kit. I believe these are poly bushings. Yeah, I think they are. Maybe they're rubber. Either way, we got the whole kit for the leaf spring. Let's get this Corvette sitting the way it's supposed to, so that tires don't rub funny. To get the leaf spring lifted up so that you're able to replace the bolt and the bushings, this is the way I do it. So I have two vice grips right here, and I put the jack underneath them and lift the spring up. So right now this is loose. Now if I was replacing just the bushings and just had the bolt this long, I'd be set to go. But that's the problem I have right now, is since I'm putting a shorter or a stock bolt on instead of a super long bolt, I actually have to lift this quite a bit. So the best thing to do is put the jack under the car, be over there while you're doing it, but also you need to watch and make sure you don't start lifting up the entire car by the leaf spring. Make sure it's just the leaf spring and possibly this trailing arm moving up as you go. But just be safe. Don't do anything dumb. That's the best way I know how to do it without taking the whole leaf spring off, which we don't want to do, and I don't think we need to. So we will get, these are 3/4 top and bottom. It comes out just like a regular bolt, and then you just put the bolt in from the top up here and put the new stuff in, and you're pretty much good to go. Here's a quick view of the difference in bolts. Yeah, so the easiest way to do this, especially if you have an extra long bolt, is in order to get the bolts in and out, the best thing to do is lift up this trailing arm until these bolt holes line up, because you notice they're a little bit off from each other, which is, you know, that's the way it's supposed to go. I can't do it on camera because I need two arms, but basically this trailing arm will move up and down, and it's best to do it with a worn out shock, with what it has. If it had a brand new shock, it probably would be a little bit more difficult. But you know, putting them back in is pretty simple. You slide in the metal and the bushing inside the trailing arm, the bolt goes down, and then you do the opposite on the ends with these. Now what I like about this kit that I got, it has the stock castle nuts and a cotter pin that go on the end instead of just these, you know, plastic locks on the end of this one. I don't know, I just trust a cotter pin to hold it a little bit more than just a piece of plastic. So we'll get those in, and then we will see the difference in height. So here it is, all installed. When you do this, don't worry about the bushings not lining up with the cups, top and bottom. And also don't worry about torquing this down really hard. Basically, just need to get it tight enough, or on there enough, that you can put the cotter pin through. Once the leaf spring comes back down, it will straighten all this stuff up, and then the bushings will fit, and it'll look fine once you get to that point. But right now, with no pressure on the spring, I mean, this is, you know, I can, if without the cotter pin, I can turn the nut by hand and all that kind of stuff. So let's lower it down and see what it looks like compared to the other side. Well, that sure makes a huge difference. There's one end, and there's the other. I don't know why people, I guess it looks cooler when it's lower. It'll have a pretty big wheel arch gap, but at least the wheels will be able to be put on correctly and aligned correctly instead of what they are now. So I like the stock stuff better. The next step is going to be taking the shock out, and you can't put the new one in until you replace the strut rod. So I want to show you guys how you know a shock is bad. So these new shocks, they come with straps around it because they're going to expand out all by themselves. This shock, if I push it down, which it's not too, you know, I've had much more worn out shocks. You see how it kind of went, it's not a good shock. And also the bushings on the bottom are completely bad. So I mean, I've had worse shocks where I could just push this down and absolutely nothing happened. It just kind of stayed. So with a little bit of exercise, this one's come back to life, but I'm here. I don't want to put this back on. Chris already bought new ones. We're going to put new ones on. So in order to get it off, the best way is to, there's a bolt that comes out here, there's the nut that comes down there. You have to lift the trailing arm up just a little bit with the jack to get the pressure off of it, and then you can slide it out. Now we have to work on getting the shock mount out, which can actually be a pain in the butt because they can rust pretty badly onto the mount right there. But I'm hoping, since somebody put these adjustable strut rods in, it'll be a little bit easier to get them off. So fingers crossed. Here's the shock mount removed, which after soaking it in penetrating oil, it actually came up pretty well. I just used a 4-pound hammer and this little extension so I didn't mess the threads up. But take a look at this. This is why the tires are sitting so goofy. I can take this inner bushing completely out. So bushing is toast. I mean, there's pretty much no bushing at all left. There, that's the bushing. And then you go up here. See how much this is moving back and forth? It's trash too. So these, I guess you could put new bushings in them, but it's easier just to buy new ones. So these will probably go in the parts pile in case anybody wants to redo them. But yep, junk. Here's the other side. The sucker just fell out, and all the bushing is actually still installed. You ready for it? That's all bushing. All that dirt, it looks like dirt, but it's bushing. All of it. Just disintegrated. I guess maybe from sitting, but yep, that's it. There you go. When your wife asks you why you have 2 jacks, this is why. So when you do something for the first time, it's kind of hard to figure out the process of doing it. I thought I could do leaf spring ends, strut rods, then shocks. Turns out I need to do all of them at the same time. So in order to get this strut rod to fit nicely in the trailing arm, I had to unattach the leaf spring again, which is fine. But and then I had to jack it up with this jack, and at this point I have all the bolts in loosely. I can put the shock on. Once I put the shock on, put the leaf spring back together, and we should be good to go. But I fought a long time trying to get the adjustable strut rod in while the leaf spring was still on, and it just doesn't happen. I think it makes the trailing arm kind of move sideways, and you kind of need it to be loose in order for that to work. But it's in, and we're making progress. So right now the car looks like a 4x4. Why? Well, it's because I just put it down from being on jack stands, and when the car's on jack stands, the wheels are going to go in like that, and so it lands on the ground like that, and it needs to driven back and forth a couple of times in order to make it settle out. But here's the good part, so if you look down here, the leaf spring isn't even close. Well, it's close to the tire, but it will kind of adjust itself out once it gets driven, and then Chris can take it to the alignment shop, and he can have it put 100% correct. So these tires are supposed to stand straight up. So right now they're a little bit, the top is a little bit toward the right. So it'll adjust itself. They weren't able to line up his rear end when he went to, or his rear suspension when he went to the alignment shop because of that. So with new ones, they should be able to do it, and without those lowering bolts, the leaf spring won't be hitting the tires like it was before. So next we have an idler arm to do, front shocks to do, and then we will work on the engine bay. It's time to move on to the front of Chris's car, and in taking the wheels off, there's some good things. We have drilled and slotted, I guess maybe they're just drilled, brake rotors, so that's good. And then stainless steel braided brake lines. It's also had a recent lubrication job on the ball joints and the tie rods and stuff like that. And the brake pads, look fairly decent. He's at least more than 50%, so nothing wrong with that. But today we're going to work on getting these shocks replaced. So the way you can tell if a shock is good, just like the old ones, if you push them in, do they push back up? These obviously do not, so they will be replaced. After that, we'll be checking out that idler arm and going from there. So the idler arm is a pretty easy part. Basically, it's just an L-shaped bracket that attaches the steering gear to your frame in one spot. Your steering box is the other spot. And so basically, you take the nut off, use a pickle fork, pop this off, and here's the idler arm. So they said it was bad. It's pretty loosey-goosey, but that's the issue, I think. So we'll see how it comes apart. There's two bolts that hold it in. There's one right there, and then there's one right below it, right there. So easiest way to get to these is pretty much from under the car, sadly, or a ratcheting wrench from up top. Doesn't this engine look a million times better with this intake? So I've already done a video on the intake, so I didn't really take much video of it, but there's one thing I do want to show you, and I think you'll find it interesting. Here in this distributor came out of Chris's car. You have something called a vacuum advance. Basically, when the vacuum goes up on your motor, it advances your timing so it runs better at high RPM, and if they're bad, your car won't run very well. So if you watch this, I have a vacuum pump. You can also test it by sucking on the end of it, but if you look at this, I pump this, it does not hold any vacuum, and I suck on it and nothing happens. But if you go over here to this distributor, my parts distributor that I have, and you put that on there, now it's not going to hold vacuum for forever, but it's supposed to move everything inside the distributor. So I'm going to swap it out with that one, and I'll probably give Chris a really good deal on it. But yep, this is toast, and so the car should run a million times better with the vacuum advance actually working. To show you guys what this does, I've connected my vacuum pump to it, and you watch, as I pump this, it advances the timing. So every time your RPMs go up over idle, it will do this. So that wasn't going on at all before, and now it is, which is good. Here is the final product. Look how much better it sits in the back. Some might think that that's too high, but that's just about right. The best part is that with adjustable strut rods, it lined up really well in the back. It needs a little bit more, but you can still do it. It's really windy. And last but not least, here's the new intake manifold. Looking really good. The engine bay on this car looks awesome. So until next time, see how well it starts up. Starter needs replaced. Look at that. Like a champ. Much better than it was when I delivered. So until next time on Chris's car, you can drive it around and have lots of fun.